everyone, and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low-budget show. It's the show so low, has no budget. Much like the first episode of the show we're going to be talking about today. We'll get into it later because the show we're talking about, you've seen it in the thumbnail, you've seen it in the title. This is, I think, one of the most important cartoons ever made. I stand by that. I put it right up there with The Simpsons and the Flintstones. This show matters. And when we get into that, we'll talk about it then. And I think it's going to be fun. I always wanted to talk about this character. I didn't know the right place to do it. And now I'm just like, it's time. Do it, man. Talk about SpongeBob. But before we get into that, because I think some new people are going to be drawn into this episode. I hope that's the case, at least. Before that, with every episode of the GeekWave, we do like to talk about the news in geeky culture that has come out. Movies, comics, TV shows, video games, anything big and important, we talk about it here. So we're going to get into a little bit of news, starting with this that oh man, this is a fun one. It's fun because I hate it. And I have a lot of opinions on this idea. So Todd Phillips has shown the script for Joker 2. It's got a really bad title called like Faux Pas or whatever the fuck. It means same mental illness. It's like about the same mental illness. Basically, the story is Joker 2. Somebody has the same condition as the previous guy. Normally, like the name it's talking about is for like a family member or somebody close to somebody emulating like the same mental illness. We know that Arthur Fleck has this disease where he can't stop laughing, and it's so annoying. So that movie that made $1 billion for no reason is getting a sequel, and I hate it. I haven't talked a lot about the Joker on this channel, the movie or the character. First off, I am probably the furthest thing from a Joker fan you are ever going to find. It is a character I cannot stand. It is a concept that I think is overplayed and drawn out. I don't think it's the most important villain in the Rogues Gallery. I understand why writers feel like they have to tell their Joker story. If I ever was given the opportunity to touch Batman, just put my little fingers in the Batman well, I would never in a million years have a story for Joker because I don't give a shit. I don't buy Joker action figures when I buy everything else in DC. I hate the character and the concept. And I cannot stand the pretentious bullshit that is that Todd Phillips movie. I hate the script for it. I hate the way it presents itself. I hate that everybody thought it was this brilliant idea. I hate that it convinced the world that the Joker is an important enough character to get a spin-off, to get a lead. I hate it. Do I understand why it got a sequel? Of course I do, because we deserve this. As a society, we failed ourselves in convincing ourselves that Joker is a character to make an art house film for. I would rather die than have another one of these. But here we are. This is what we've done. This is what you've all done. You did this. All of you who are in the sold-out theaters every week watching this piece of crap movie. This is where you got us. Now the rumors are flying. Is it going to be another Joker? Is it going to be Harley Quinn? Is it going to be Batman? Who's really going to be the second Joker in this stupid Joker movie? Here's what I have to say. If Todd Phillips even touches the concept of Harley Quinn, it's going to be the worst the character's ever been run and her entire continuity, because I do not have confidence that the creative team that made the Joker movie could fully comprehend, could fully understand how to write a female character. That's not a negative towards anybody involved. I'm just saying that creative team that gave us that product are going to make the worst version of a female character you could imagine, and Harley Quinn will lose all of her nuance and importance as a character. Please don't do that. Please don't get involved in that. I will literally scream. I will do an entire episode talking about why the Joker sucks, so don't do that, please. I would rather scream the top of my lungs. Please don't do that. And we have another bit of DC news here, jumping back and forth. We have been teased about the Black Adam stuff for a long time. Dwayne Johnson's been working on it for 15 years. Well, we got a trailer. And yeah, it's fine, I guess. This was very much exactly what I expected a Black Adam trailer to be. It wasn't unimpressive. It wasn't special. It was just like, yeah, okay. They're using a weird tint where everything looks like dusty, and I guess that's what Kahndaq's supposed to look like, but it looks like a film from 2012. And that's what bothers me. Dwayne Johnson is not going to give us a great nuanced performance for Black Adam. He's going to be a little bit angry. and never really find his footing anywhere else. But I don't care. I don't care. Black Adam is a character you could tell one story with, and when you tell that story, where else do you go? Honestly, nowhere else to go. So, I don't care. It's going to be whatever. I think it's going to be a filler movie where it's just like, yeah, this is what people want, I guess. Supporting cast is cool. Cyclone looks really fun. I like that. All the JSA members, they look really good. Dr. Fate looks great. Adam Smasher looks great. People are comparing him to Deadpool, and I'm like, shut up. There's nothing similar about those characters. If they write him like that, I will be very upset. Please let these characters have different personalities as opposed to being one-note characters you can throw into any single thing. I really don't want that to be the case, but I feel like that's where we're headed. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. But whatever, it's fine. They all look interesting. That's cool, I guess. Yeah. I wish I was more excited. So I like all of these concepts a little bit more. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm not excited for any superhero movies right now. I guess we could jump into Jake Schreier doing a Thunderbolts film. That's where we could go next. I don't give a shit. I think it's cool. Like, I am a huge fan of the Thunderbolts. Like, that concept was really fun. I remember, that's not when I started reading comic books, but when I really got in to Marvel Comics, one of the first things I really picked up was Thunderbolts, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Oh, wait, these are villains? Like, what is this? And I thought that was a really cool concept. I just don't have faith the MCU could really hold that together, and this is the thing that I know some people might overlook when it comes to the Thunderbolts, but it's essentially just a self-aware book talking about a certain type of story. The original Thunderbolts is like, how long can we keep up this charade? This is going to be weird, and then it delves into some weirder shit as it goes down and becomes just a parody book. It's like insane. Then you got like the reboot from Daniel Way, and it's like, this is just over-the-top violent characters doing bad stuff. And then it's like, this isn't very good. And then now today it's just like, what if we take the concept of the Thunderbolts and we make it literally based on just like the Suicide Squad? I hate that. So I hope this is more like the original run with a great team. I don't want to see Bucky on it. I don't want to see Yelena, but I can stand Yelena more so than I could like John Walker or Bucky. I think Clint should lead it. If you're not going to do Zemo, which I hope they do Zemo, I think it should be Clint. I just don't want Contessa to be attached to this. I want this to be solely an idea built from Zemo. Because when it's Contessa, it's just so boring. I want Contessa to be the one that does Dark Avengers. That's where I think she should stick to. That's where I think she would shine. So I want her to be doing that. But whatever, I guess we'll see what happens. My dream cast for a Thunderbolts film, it would be Zemo, Moonstone, Songbird, Power Man, Mach 5, the Mach 1, and whoever the Fixer was. Who was the Fixer? I can't remember who the Fixer was. Like, I want the original Thunderbolts lineup. We're never going to get that because we have to get Florence Pugh in there. We have to get Wyatt Russell in there. But I hope it's better than what other things have been in the MCU recently. Who's to say? I don't know. Oh, I'm so nervous. So nervous for this. I think it's really cool. It's a movie, though. I would really hate it if it was a TV show. Like, come on. Actually try with your movies now, you know? It feels like you're just stalling for time, and I don't even know where it's going. And look, that's a whole other conversation on where the MCU's heading. There is no direction. I don't care what people are like, but they're setting up this and that and that. There's no direction. They're just seeing what sticks, and they're going to work off it, and that's fine. But when you've built your entire career off of being this one thing, it's not fine. It's not. But whatever. I don't care. Okay, so we have another trailer. This one's more personal to me that I just needed to bring up because it matters to who I am as a person. The next couple pieces of news actually mean that. So Rob Zombie is a guy I'm not a big fan of. I'll be honest. I like some of his stuff. Some of it's not like my heart's desire. But he rebooted the Munsters. I literally think he just said, I want to do it. No one else was doing it, so he did it. And I have to commend a man for doing that, just being like, I'm going to tell the story I want to tell. You can try to stop me if you want, but I dare you all to try to stop me from making my Munsters film. And he did. We got a teaser. It's funny. It's very Munsters, and I respect the hell of him for that. There's still no release date given or where this is going to go. I would lose my shit if this went to a theatrical release. I have doubts it would. I could see this going to something like Shudder or something like HBO Max or just one of those smaller things, but I don't really know who owns the Munsters right now. But, wouldn't it be awesome come this Halloween season? You could go see a Munsters movie in theaters. I would love that more than anything. Because do you think it's a big enough franchise where people would be like, oh my goodness, they rebooted the Munsters? Do you think that would be enough? I don't think so. I think the time of the Munsters is past. But if anything, Wednesday Addams could maybe bring it back into popularity. Maybe it'll be a Netflix thing. Either way, I think it looks awesome. It's very Rob Zombie, very Munsters. I can't complain about that at all. I think that's great. Speaking of things that are great, Schmigadoon. Oh man, I loved Schmigadoon. This season was fantastic and I loved it. So Schmigadoon, after much speculation, has finally been confirmed for a second season. Oh man, am I happy. In this one, it's going to be different. They're going to do a different type of musical. They're going to be styling it like Schmigadoon Chicago style. Or is it Schmigacago or something? They like changed the name. Or Chicagodoon? Something like that. It's awesome. The cast is coming back. New people are going to be appearing in the show. Oh, I'm so excited. I am so excited for more Schmigadoon because that was awesome. And I love it. Like, Cicely is going to be coming back, and so is Keenan. I'm like, yes, this is going to be great. I cannot wait to see what this is going to be. If you haven't watched Schmigadoon, please do, because it is just a beautiful love letter to musicals and stories of that nature. I loved it so much, and I think that's fantastic. And the fact that it just was good and worked makes me happy. I might have to rewatch Schmigadoon now because that was such a good show. I really liked it. So season 2 of Schmigadoon, I'll probably be talking about it when it drops. Can't wait to see where it goes. That's going to be really fun. Our final piece of news that came out the day I am recording this is a little bit more information on a character who will be appearing in Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. The Spot is going to be the villain. They've been talking about this for a while. I think somebody leaked it or talked about it. The Spot. Oh, I love The Spot. What a great concept for a villain, a great concept for a character. It makes sense that that's kind of like a multi-dimensional character that you can fight and all this stuff. Maybe give some more backstory to the actual spots of The Spot. And Jason Schwartzman's going to be voiced. I'm like, that's really cool. That's a fun concept. And the artwork they showed looked fantastic. This is going to be a great movie. It's going to be so fun and so original. I cannot wait to see how that looks. And if anything, the best thing that this is going to do is bring The Spot back into popularity. And we're finally going to get that Marvel Legends Spot figure. They have never done it yet. I feel like they should. They really should. And we're going to get it. And we're going to get the iconic thing where you can get like the stand. You're going to have the Spider-Man hand coming through The Spot, punching him. Thank you. That's all we want. That's all we've been waiting for. Looks great. I cannot wait to see this. And what a great voice actor for Jason Schwartzman. That's a perfect choice. Not somebody you'd expect for a villain role. So I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. That's actually trying to be something different. I think that's a really fun idea. I love it. Love it a lot. And that's all the news we kind of got for this week. So when we come back, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to jump into the world of Bikini Bottom and talk about SpongeBob Squarepants. That's right, folks. Finally, after much ado, I think I've been wanting to talk about SpongeBob for as long as I've been doing this channel. And I've done it a few times where I brought up the character and the world a little bit, but I never really talked about him. You know, when I did the meme episode, I'm like, yeah, SpongeBob has to be in there. I did a video like, who could I beat up in the SpongeBob world? Turns out I could beat up a lot of them, but a lot of them could beat up me. I really love this character. I love this concept. And I think it's an important one for an entire generation. Now, look, I want to do more of these videos where I talk about like what makes something a timeless classic. Why are these characters and why are these themes standing the test of time? Why is it that 23 years after the premiere of SpongeBob, we are still talking about this character? We are still exploring this world, exploring these concepts. Why is he standing the test of time? I want to know, and I want to kind of talk about it and think about it. And before we do that, I just want to say, like, I teased it at the beginning. I'm going to say it again. not just to like my generation, but I think in terms of the grand scheme of cartoons and animation on television in the syndicated format, SpongeBob is one of the most important and the most prominent stories. I said it at the beginning, like The Simpsons before it, like the Flintstones before it, SpongeBob Squarepants is an important part of animation history and conceptualization. Like, this character is as important as The Simpsons, is as funny as the Flintstones, is as timeless as those characters, and will be revered long after we're all gone. There's always going to be SpongeBob in the world. People are always going to remember this character. I think he's important. And I think really when it starts down to it, and when you get into like the idea of why it worked, it really comes to this time of just like, you hit it at the right moment in history, you struck oil at the right time, you made it work when it needed to work. SpongeBob came out in 1999. The first few episodes were in that year. That is just kind of like when animation started to boom. And look, we're going to at some point talk about the other shows on Nickelodeon that come before this, and the shows on Cartoon Network that come before us, and the Disney Afternoon stuff that comes before this. There's a whole subculture and a whole sub-series of people who could just like do a better deep dive of animation's history before the point of SpongeBob, because he was right there in the era where it's like, Cartoon Network is prominent, Nickelodeon is prominent. These characters and these concepts of animation have existed before and after him. There's prominent characters and ideas that come right around the same time as him in terms of adult animation and children's animation on various networks. Everything with SpongeBob, like that, he's right in that era when things just exploded and became this beautiful concept that people still talk about today. And as well revered as those concepts are, for some reason this one broke the mold and came through. And what I really think about it is just that it was the closest any of those shows were to the Simpsons motto. Like, it was distinguished characters with distinguished voice actors doing adult things aimed for a younger audience. Like, I love a lot of the other shows in that era. I really do. There's so many great ones, and we can get into it and whenever. But when you look at things just like Johnny Bravo and the Powerpuff Girls, and yes, they're from different times around this era, and things like Samurai Jack around that time, and you even look at things like the Fairly Odd Parents and things with the Disney Afternoon with like Gargoyles before that and Darkwing Duck and all those stuff before that, like they're all so much like a certain style of animation, a certain style of story where it has to be a certain way. But SpongeBob was like, we're going to just experiment and try different things, but still having that timeless feel. And I really hearken it. I know it's a weird comparison, but I think the early seasons of SpongeBob are something you should compare to like the early seasons of Family Guy, where it's like it knew the joke it was saying, whether for better or ill. It knew exactly what it was trying to say. It knew exactly where it was going with that joke, and it just worked. It's like you get the characters right away. You can go in different directions with the characters, and it made sense. And because of that, you could experiment in different ways. You could actually do songs. You could actually just have different types of animation popping up. And it worked well, and people responded to it. And that's why it's just like you struck at the right time, where it's like the animation boom is coming up. You're surrounded by great, adoring things, but you found your own unique style that made you stand out. And that's why you persevered, because as much as I love these other concepts, and look, the animated animals is its own thing, that's really cool. Really, none of them were doing what this did, because it's a great title for starters, SpongeBob SquarePants. It's iconic, it's distinct. You can find that in a crowd and pick it out. It has that perfect idea of just like, can you guess the character from the silhouette, which is an important thing in animation, an important thing when designing a character. Can you guess the character just from the silhouette? How many other characters in animation before or after are as distinguishable as SpongeBob? You can just easily point out the square with the stick legs. That's him. You know it instantly. And that just draws your attention to it, where you can just look at him and be like, oh, okay, this is SpongeBob. There he is. This is his story. He's just there for you to see. And you can pick out Patrick in a lineup, and Mr. Krabs in a lineup, and Sandy and Plankton and Squidward. You can find them all in a lineup and be like, yes, there they are. That's what they're doing. And the other things at this time too, they're iconic. but more people just get this one. I think solely because of the generation that it grew up on. And look, I'm going to date myself a little bit. I'm born around the same time as SpongeBob. I'm a little before SpongeBob, but my generation, the generation slightly before me, slightly after me, in that like middling ground between millennial and Gen Z, which is a surprising group that nobody can really like pinpoint where we are, because I'm not really millennial, not really Gen Z. Right there in the middle, post-millennial, the other generation, right there in the middle, suddenly you have this boom of kids who are switching to different technologies and understanding things in different ways. So we're the generation that still grew up with VCRs and DVDs, and we could buy the VCRs and DVDs. We knew how to use a landline. We just had all this information on how to get us to SpongeBob. And that's another thing. People forget that the DVD era was so important for young people. And I know like VCR before that and VHS tapes before that were very prominent, but DVDs, like, nah, you can just burn it on a disc and you can give it to a mass market. There's no bullshit behind it with like rewinding a tape or finding a VCR player. It's just like, here's a DVD. You can put it in your car. You can put it on a little traveling kit for your kid. And that's a very important thing for why SpongeBob is lasting, because the generation that grew up with SpongeBob is now one of the most prominent generations talking about stuff on social media. The generation that are making the memes of SpongeBob, making the YouTube videos of SpongeBob, talking about this character endlessly, are the ones who could just sit in front of the TV, watch the syndicated episodes, just binge them all at once, watch it on your laptop or in your car while your parents are driving you somewhere. They just put it on a DVD player, you sit down and watch it. The character was just right there, where it's like this generation that could like see it on television, watch it on a VHS tape, watch it on a DVD player, download it online. They just found a way to make it work. There's always a way to get a SpongeBob thing. I remember owning SpongeBob DVDs. I remember always knowing this character was around because you just had to have him there. It's very impressive. And again, it's like right there at the right time. I have to commend everybody involved in Nickelodeon for just being like, this is the one we're going to push. Like, they had other ideas at the time. I think why this one was just pushed a little bit more was because of the contrast to everything else at the time. The other ones, because Fairly Odd Parents came out around the same time as this too. Fairly Odd Parents was just more, it's still people, and you're like, yeah, that's fine, and just like magic wishes and stuff. But when you really look at SpongeBob, like early SpongeBob, it's just playing with its concept so well. It's like, we're in the ocean. There's a squirrel who lives in a biodome. When SpongeBob goes in, he has to wear a glass bowl on his head of water or else he'll die. We have like a haunted pirate ship captain that comes in and gets our characters to do things. You have Squidward, who wants so desperately to be viewed as this important guy, and suddenly he's not. And you work in like a lobster trap and you sell burgers to people. Like, it's pretty much just a perfect ensemble and a perfect story. It's also just kind of the millennial story, isn't it? You know, you're working like a 9-to-5 job. You're trying to be happy. You hang out with your best friend when you can. You're either SpongeBob or you're Squidward. You're just like miserable and stuck in this place. And I think that's also just like you can connect to it so much more now. And the thing is, too, I'm just going to say this, and this is no criticism to any of the other shows from Cartoon Network at the time, from Nickelodeon at the time, from Disney at the time. Name any iconic moments from those shows. Like, unless you are a diehard fan, can you? The thing is, like, everybody can pick out a moment from SpongeBob's history that is just important. And that, again, is just like the pushing the market out there, getting you the DVDs, getting you the merchandise, just pushing it out there, giving him a movie when he's only been around for a few years. Like, that is a big deal. That's just like the character just worked. You had everything work so perfectly, and you just had it finding its footing so early on. That's great. I really like that. And there's so much, like, I think that's one of the main reasons it's a timeless classic is you struck it at the right time. You had a visual concept that was appealing to everybody. You marketed it perfectly, where you could push out the merchandise and the franchisability of it and just make it these different things. You had iconic jokes and moments for the show that people could relate to and start on. And you essentially just made Family Guy for kids. And I know that's a controversial opinion, and some people might be like, that's not true. But it is. You have your core family, your outlandish leads who get into trouble, your kind of like voice of reason, sarcastic one who doesn't really want to break from the mold of things. You got your power-hungry one who's out there for revenge, you know. You have all of the right formulas working. It's essentially the perfect formula for television. And it worked. And it's, say what you will about everything else. Again, I don't want to criticize any of the other shows. This one just stood the test of time because of its star power, because it just worked. And that's the thing too. Everyone just liked SpongeBob. It just worked. It was fun. It had all the right beats to it, and I just enjoyed the hell out of it. And I think so much about the character and the franchise just stems from this beautiful place of storytelling. Because you could do anything with SpongeBob. There was no limitations to what you could do. You want to go to land, go on land. You want to parody Batman and Robin, parody Batman and Robin. You want to do episodes just about singing or like power struggles, or you do an episode where Plankton wants to break in and steal the formula, you can do that. You want to do an episode where Squidward's like, I'm miserable, I'm going to move to where I think I'm happy, you can do that. You can do an episode where SpongeBob has to take Mr. Krabs' daughter somewhere. You're like, it all works fine. And it's just, all these characters are just so iconic looking. And that's such a key detail to this. You can just find them and know them and love them. I think that's great. I think there's so much about this that works. So much about this I love. And it's going to outlast us all. It is The Simpsons. The jokes are that important. The jokes are that funny. They're not just jokes for kids. And yes, there are jokes for kids. There's certain jokes that work for kids. But they're funny jokes. They're strong jokes. And they're just timeless jokes. And that's the other thing too. It's like everything about the character was just timeless. It just all worked so naturally, and I loved it, and I think everybody loved it too. I know some people are going to be like, this is nothing like The Simpsons or Family Guy, but you have to imagine, in the same year when Family Guy is premiering, when Futurama is premiering, so is SpongeBob. And you can put all of those next to each other, and they are telling the same type of stories. They're doing the same type of thing with the stories they are presenting to you. The same type of, if Futurama's in the future, you could tell stories like that. SpongeBob's underwater, you're telling stories like that. They're just appealing to the audience, and it's just brilliant. It's satisfying. It's amazing. Nothing's like it. Nothing's like it. Nothing will be like it again. I do have some hesitations on some things that bother me, because of how they updated it. And they're like, here's the Patrick Star Show, and here's Camp Coral. And it's like, that's kind of annoying because it's losing the magic that way. But it's bound to happen. And I know Hillenburg was very adamant, like, we shouldn't do this, but he can't stop it now. So I know Nickelodeon's going to cash us for all it works. It's just like The Simpsons, it's lasted longer than it should. And that's the sad truth about a lot of shows like this. But also, it's kind of special, isn't it, that a show like this could stand the test of time and just be something creative. So marketability was right there. Iconic characters hitting at the right time, hitting the right jokes at the right time. Those are things that made those are things that made SpongeBob, not Spider-Man, a timeless classic. And it's worked well ever since. I love the animation style of the early episodes. I think especially when it gets to the modern era and we switch to different formattings and different flash styles, it's like we're losing some of the magic. But it's right there, like those early other shows too, where it's like the animation was just so fluid and perfect and stylized and beautiful, and they're still iconic. And again, it's that thing where the generation that grew up on it's now the one talking about it, and it's the one remembering those things and looking at the older episodes. That's the key episodes you want to talk about anyways. It's like the Simpsons thing, where after a certain season, people stop watching. You can find, I think maybe it's like post the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, where people start to be like, okay, we're doing this a little too long. But right there in the middle, you have iconic comedy that has lasted longer than anything, that has been memed to hell. That's another reason this thing has lasted so long. It's always been memed. It's always been joked. And the series has always been in on the joke. And that's an important thing, too. It's never shying away from these things. They did a whole episode about the My Leg guy. It's a recent episode that's still kind of funny, but they did it. They did an episode about the My Leg guy. They're not afraid to talk about this stuff now. When it gets self-referential, it's still good. That's the important thing. It's a timeless classic. And I think let's dive a little bit into all the characters and just talk about like why they're so lasting and why they're so fun. Of course, you have SpongeBob, and I don't really feel like we need to dive too much into him. He has an iconic voice, an iconic laugh that people can joke about, an iconic style. He's just your happy-go-lucky character that a lot of kids emulate by. He can be sad when he wants to. He can be emotional when he needs to. He is essentially the grown-up kid, and I think that's an important thing. The other important thing that like made kids connect to SpongeBob was he didn't drive. He wanted to drive, but he never could. He always had to go there where he's walking. He wanted to hang out with his friends and play games and go jellyfishing and just have a good time. And that's an important thing too. It was like he was the eternal kid, always getting there, always being the one doing what he wants. But still he was free. He didn't live with his parents. He was able to explore, experience, and care for and do all these different things. And it made him work. And it just made SpongeBob this fun character, just being the eternal kid. And now that you're grown up, you see SpongeBob for what he is, which is a perfect guy who's happy, who's savvy. You can love him for that. Or now that you are an older person in your 20s, you're going back and watching the show, you connect to Squidward Tentacles, who, I could probably do a whole video talking about Squidward because he's such a fascinating character, but such a perfect dichotomy to the SpongeBob character where everything's so happy and he's happy. Squidward doesn't like where he is in the world. He wants more from it. He expects more from it. He wants to be known and famous and respected, but he's not. He's stuck working with somebody who he doesn't like. But I actually think Squidward likes SpongeBob. He just doesn't like the fact that SpongeBob's happy all the time because Squidward can't be happy all the time. Squidward's relatable. And as a kid, you're just looking at it like, yeah, he's funny, he's angry, he's like, oh man, this sucks, I don't want to be next to SpongeBob. But when you grow up, you start to see Squidward is more like us than we realize. Not everybody can be SpongeBob. Sometimes we have to be Squidward. And that just works too. The timeless character. Almost your Brian Griffin character as the voice of reason. Not really, but he's just more like, there you go. There's something to look to. Angry and savvy. That's Squidward, the sarcastic man's dream. Patrick I think is the most like animated, where it's just like a dumb guy's best friend. Like he's just the silly best friend character, and it works well. It's kind of why he shouldn't have his own show, but they changed it enough where it's whatever. I actually don't hate the Patrick Star Show. It just doesn't work for what SpongeBob should be. Patrick's a good sidekick. He is. He just shows up when he needs to, makes the right jokes, does the right things. He's iconic in his own right and has a style of his own. And again, if you're looking for like you've grown up, you're no longer a Patrick or a SpongeBob, you might be a Mr. Krabs where you're just, owning a business and need to save all your money. And again, it's kind of a stereotypical joke to be like money hungry and trying for all that, but it works. There's so much depth to the Mr. Krabs character. Like he's like a war vet from the earlier seasons. That's pretty impressive. That's one of my favorite episodes. Actually, that's like the first time where I remember like really thinking and be like, oh man, no one really thinks about you, do they? Where it's like Mr. Krabs grows out of his like shell. It has to grow back before he goes see like his war vet, and SpongeBob puts on like the hollowed out shell of his previous incarnation, and he just comes in to like see his war buddies and like, I'm a fraud, I outgrew my shell, and they're all like, yeah, I had my tooth removed, yeah, the thing in my chest is no longer there, like we're all old, we all need to move on. I love that episode because it's like no one's really thinking about you when you think about it, right? You just have to remember that. I also really like that he just has a daughter that's a whale. It makes no sense, but it's perfect. It's really perfect. I like Plankton too. That's a fun character. Again, kind of in the Squidward realm where it's like untapped potential. Could potentially have everything he needs. And there's later episodes in the show where they're like, hey, here we go. Here's our history, the backstory of Mr. Krabs and Plankton. Did he steal the recipe from Plankton? Did Plankton do this? What's that? And it's like, oh, this is really not necessary, but it works well. I like seeing Plankton in that regard. That's very cool. Karen's a fun character. Just great to show up and do something fun. She's great. And of course, Sandy Cheeks, which is like, I think the perfect, just like smart character where she just comes in, is strong, is passionate. There's a whole episode of SpongeBob where they're pretending to do karate when it's a big metaphor for something else they could be doing that's distracting SpongeBob from his work. Kind of funny. Great characters all around. And Gary, of course. How iconic can you get besides Gary, which is just a snail that meows? It's perfect. You really can't beat that. Everything about this show, fire on all cylinders. Of course, one of my favorite characters is Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. That concept is funny, and that's like another thing in this era too. This reverence for what came before it, because clearly it's just making fun of like the Super Friends and Aquaman and Aqualad and clearly Batman and Robin, and you're like, this is brilliant. It's working so well. I love it. How cool is it that a show where you could easily do like the Superman or the Batman jokes is just like, we're going to do a joke of Aquaman. He's literally going to wear the colors of Aquaman. He's literally going to do all this stuff Aquaman-y. I think that's great. And if I find it If I find it, here's a picture of me dressed up as Mermaid Man. If I find it, we'll see what happens. We'll see. If I don't, I'll put it on my Instas for you to find. I love it. It's all great stuff. Larry the Lobster is a fun character too. I love some of those characters. The Flying Dutchman is somebody they don't use enough anymore. I really wish they would bring him back in some capacity. Old SpongeBob's fantastic, and that's great. Like this show, it just knows what it's doing. It knows how to make itself work, how to do all that stuff that's iconic and fun and creative. It's brilliant writing, brilliant storytelling. Everything about it works fine. Everything about it's firing perfectly. I love everything about this show, everything about these characters, everything about this concept. You see it as a kid, you're like, I'm SpongeBob. You see it as an adult, you're Squidward. It's kind of fun. It's perfect. And I could definitely go more and more in depth on SpongeBob and the world, about his characters, and maybe we'll do that in another video where we talk about the best episodes or the best side characters, or we rank every season. I've been thinking about for a long time if I want to do a SpongeBob Squarepants podcast. Do I? Oh, I don't know. I kind of do because it's so iconic. Maybe we'll come back and think about it more. Maybe if I can get a co-host for it, we'll do it. But Nickelodeon's doing their official podcast, and I don't want to do that. I want to get down into the nitty-gritty and talk about how weird the episodes can get. That's what I want to do. So we'll see what happens. But we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to talk about something very exciting, and that is Variety's best 15 SpongeBob SquarePants episodes, and let's talk about why they're iconic. So let's come back from the break and talk about it. So while I was doing prep for this video, I came across this Variety article from last year that's like the best 15 SpongeBob SquarePants episodes ranked. So I'm like, what a great way to end this episode of the GeekWave. We're going to go through the list, talk about if they're good or not, what makes them iconic. So let's jump into it. Number 15, we have Something Smells from Season 2. This is the episode where SpongeBob's got bad breath and everybody around him just wants to get away from him. It's a perfect concept, really. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, here he is. Silly boy, being disgusting. Is it like the best 15? I don't know, but I'm like, it's iconic. It's funny. It's good jokes. It just makes for some really funny stuff. And when Patrick starts to feel it, I love it too. That's a really good one to start off. At number 14, we have Rock Bottom from the first season, and I love this episode. It's one of my favorite episodes of the show, actually. They're trying to get back from Glove World. They end up in the wrong side of the tracks, and Patrick and SpongeBob are trying to find a way to get home. Patrick gets on a bus and is able to go back to Bikini Bottom, leaving SpongeBob to figure out a way to get back on the bus. And every time he tries to get a ticket, the buses leave. He's stuck in a place he doesn't love. Just iconic. Again, it's like one of those things where early on in these shows, you don't really step away from like the sets you built or like the animation cells you've made. So the fact that like, let's do like a nighttime scene in this creepy, seedy part of the way. It's really fun. I love this episode. This is, I can't name it, but it's probably in my top 10 favorite episodes of SpongeBob. I love Rock Bottom. An incredibly fun one. It's so iconic to look at. At number 13, we have Culture Shock from Season 1. This is the one where Squidward wants to be famous, right? Yeah, and then SpongeBob just comes on stage and cleans up and everybody loves it. Once again, showing you that unmatched talent will never be found. Squidward just can never catch a break. And it's just brilliant. It's just fun. I love it. It's what that thing again. Squidward's such a realistic character because you can never really get it. You'll never get happy. You'll always be stuck in the place you don't want to be. Can you ever really escape your pain? Who knows? It's fun. Not an episode I think is really fun. There is iconic moments in it, iconic things that people remember. Then we have at number 12, No Weenies Allowed from Season 3, where SpongeBob wants to get into the salty spittoon, but, you know, it's the roughest, toughest sailor club ever to be built under the 7 seas. Can SpongeBob get into that? Nah, he's kind of a weenie. There's a lot of this idea being presented that SpongeBob's not tough enough, especially in, like, the earlier episodes of the show where, like, he has, like, the fake muscles and he's going into the competition. And this one where it's like, is he strong enough to get in there? He's really not, but I don't think it's, like, iconic. I don't think it's as iconic as some of the other ones that come before, but I think what's iconic is like Weenie Hut Jr. and the Salty Spittoon, because they're just, those are more iconic and those are kind of funny. At number 11, Survival of the Idiots from Season 2, where Sandy wants to go into hibernation and you see Patrick and SpongeBob coming in and doing some weird shit. This is great. Like, they're doing personas. Dirty Dan and Pinhead Larry. Those are iconic in themselves. Who you calling Pinhead is iconic in itself. It's a great episode. This one I do think is iconic. It's very strong, very funny. Every joke works. And when you do this stuff with Sandy, I think it works really well, where she's just angry and can beat them up, because that's what I like about this. Like, she's like, look at these two idiots that I'm friends with. I could easily beat their asses, but I don't. I love it. It's very fun. Oh, and at number 10, we have Club SpongeBob with the Magic Conch. And oh, this is a classic one. Have they made Magic Conch like merchandise before? I can't remember if they have, but it's like, hey, Patrick, Squidward, and SpongeBob were kind of like all stranded in like a kelp forest. They don't know how to survive. SpongeBob and Patrick keep using like a magic conch to figure out what to do. And Squidward just quietly goes insane, which again is very authentically Squidward. It's great because these guys, there's such a great just like way they play off each other, where Squidward is just the straight man and he's just looking at these two idiots. It's brilliant. This one is iconic. Everybody from a certain generation, if you say all hail the magic conch, they'll understand what you're saying. That's all I'm saying about that. Like, that's an iconic one. It's great. At number 9, we have Welcome to the Chum Bucket from season 2, where SpongeBob goes to work for Plankton because he loses a fight, or he loses a card game. Mr. Krabs loses a card game to Plankton. I barely remember this one aside from like the song, "This Grill Is Not a Home." Like, that's the thing with Seth MacFarlane stuff, where it's like you do the song and it instantly becomes iconic. And as we go further down this list, you'll see what I mean. That's it. That's like the cultural touchstone that you're going to remember and think about. And it's a good episode. And a great episode too, the Fry Cook Games from season 2, where it's just like a parody of the Olympics, and it's just the Chum Bucket and Krusty Krab competing. Patrick works for the Chum Bucket. They get into a huge fight. It's brilliant. It's just fun. I love it. And you just see like they're wearing each other's colors on their underwear. That's how they become friends again. It's brilliant. There's so much good stuff about this episode. I think it's really good. I love it. And we come to number 7, which is the Krusty Krab training video. This one's great. I think this is in my top 5. Because it's like, this is what you can do when you do this formula. You break from it. You just have, like, you're starting off. You're the new Krusty Krab worker. You're following what SpongeBob does. You learn poop. People, what is it? Something about our patties. People order our patties. Is that what the joke is with poop? Yeah, it's brilliant. And, like, all the hoopla. It's really funny. It's really funny. I really like this episode. It's like changing the formula enough, and you think you're going to learn what the Krusty Krab secret formula is, but cuts away before you get to hear it. Kind of brilliant. I love the gag that we never know what the secret formula is, because we don't need to know. We don't need to know it. It's just brilliant. I love it. And coming in at number 6, we have Frankendoodle, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is an iconic one. I think this is brilliant. Just an actual pencil used in the animation to draw an evil version of SpongeBob. It is brilliant. It is smart. It is creative. Mihoy Minoy, everyone will recognize that from a certain generation. And that's the thing, too. You just have a stupid saying. It's like, dough or don't have a cow, man. You can recognize it from just a noise. People know Doodle Bob. It's brilliant. I love it. That's a great episode. And it's definitely worth to be in the top 15. Also worth being in the top 15 is number 5, Graveyard Shift. Oh, it's a great one where you just see Squidward makes up a story because they're working the late nights. It's like, who's going to order a patty at 3 a.m.? And just Patrick wakes up and eats the patty. It's brilliant. The hash-slinging slasher, which is just a really good joke. Oh, it's fun. It's just really fun. I love when you just like get a good Squidward and SpongeBob team up, because when they're doing stuff together, it could easily just be like annoying, but when they're on the same page, you just buy it and you love it. And just like, who's flickering the lights? Nosferatu. What a reference that means nothing. I love when it does that, because it's like, what's the point of any of this? Just brilliance is what it is. And that's what that was. Just a brilliant idea being portrayed. I really dug this episode. It's so strong. Earlier on in the show, too, and I really dig that. It's such a strong one. And at number 4, controversial, Chocolate with Nuts, where SpongeBob and Patrick are trying to sell chocolate door to door. And this one, I like it, but I don't know if it's my favorite. I don't know if I could put in the top of the list. Like of course, again, it's like the chocolate. Everyone knows the chocolate. That's a good one too. Like everyone will know that line. I love how they just take out those ladies at the end. That's very funny. But I don't know if this one's as iconic as I remember. The chocolate thing is, but I like it. And again, the thing I was talking about with those earlier seasons of Family Guy, it's like you remember the songs. Such is the case with this episode of SpongeBob, which is definitely worthy of being in the top 3. So number 3 is pizza delivery, whereas the Krusty Krab pizza is the pizza for you and me. And then SpongeBob and Squidward are just trying to deliver this stupid pizza where they're just walking down the street, just going to this guy's house, and SpongeBob singing all these different songs. And then it's not just a boulder, it's a rock. The pioneers used to ride these babies for miles. This is what I mean when I say like iconic comedy. Who is a writer who watched this show has not been inspired by this scene? Just the angry guy and the happy-go-lucky guy. Like, it's so iconic. It's not the first time it's ever been done, but it is the most iconic that you could think of. Again, so many great lines. How many people just sing the Krusty Krab pizza? How many people just go, it's not a boulder, it's a rock? It's brilliant. I love it. And when Squidward sticks up for SpongeBob, I love it too. Because Squidward doesn't hate him. He doesn't hate him. He just doesn't like that he's happy all the time. Because Squidward can't be happy all the time. That's the key. And again, something you'll notice in the top 2 for this list on Variety. The songs. Because here at number 2, we have the second episode of the show, Ripped Pants. Where SpongeBob rips his pants at the beach. Everyone makes fun of him. And then he does a weird song about ripping his pants, and other people who had incidences at the beach are there, and they're just like, yeah, let's sing a song about it. Brilliant. Absolutely, 110% a brilliant idea that's being explored here. I love it. So strong, so funny. Iconic episode, 100%. Now, again, music's important for SpongeBob, which is why on Variety's list, the number 1 episode is from season 2. Band Geeks. Ooh, this is an interesting one because this is like the Super Bowl parody one where Squidward's trying to teach everybody how to play an instrument. And is mayonnaise an instrument? Of course it's not. But eventually the whole town figures out how to play these instruments. They come to our world and they play a song as like a marching band. And we see SpongeBob goes into this beautiful song about whatever. And it's like, this is brilliant. They parody this at other halftime shows in the real world. Like, this is as iconic as SpongeBob gets. The song itself, I don't think is as iconic as other songs in SpongeBob. But you remember that scene where it says, like, they're coming out into the real world. Squidward's like, what the hell is happening? It's important. It's awesome. That is a great episode of SpongeBob. Would I put it as number 1? I personally wouldn't. I think Shanghai is more interesting. That one I think is a little more fun. I think Bubble Buddy should be in the top of this list somewhere. Those ones are really good. I really like and again, it's just because I like Hollywood, I really like the one where SpongeBob's like, they're replacing you guys with actors. Like, that's a good one. But none of these episodes are bad. They're all very strong, all very funny, all iconic in their own ways. But on this list, I think the most iconic is Pizza Delivery. That's a good one. And Doodle Bob is iconic. And I think Hoopla, the Krusty Krab training video, is iconic. They're all great episodes. They're all very memorable. I love this show. Like, none of those episodes are bad, and you remember a distinctive thing from all of them. If I told you to go back and look at episodes of Cat Dog, do you think you can remember a distinctive thing from every episode? I don't think you could, but you could with SpongeBob. And he's got 3 movies, spin-offs coming out, the wazoo. He's never going to die. He's going to outlive us all. And good for Tom Kenny for getting a gig that actually pays well. That's awesome. I really like that. So yes, SpongeBob. If you want to see me talk about this guy more, I am more than willing to do it. I will talk endlessly about SpongeBob and the world he's a part of. But until then, that is going to do it for this episode of the GeekWave. Now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. If you are listening to this on the podcast feed, please give us a rating over there. It definitely helps out. And as always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Do you want to know the secret ingredients for the Krabby Patty? I'll tell you right now, it's this.